Welcome to Wellness Radio with Dr. Jeanette Gallagher as your host. Her show discusses topics of health, wellness, and spirituality, and is about discovering your place in this great universe from your cells to the cosmos. Along with her guests, in casual conversation, she strives to ask the difficult questions that may be holding you back from a vibrant life, and shares new ideas that may inspire you to make a change in your life that you only can see in your dreams. And now, here is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wellness Radio. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher, and it's a pleasure to have you with us here this evening. Tonight we are going to be talking about our journeys, our human existence, what happens to our body when we hit a wall. We have a diagnosis. Something says, oof, I'm really off key. I don't know what's going to happen to me. What am I going to do now? We talk about a health crisis. Tonight we're going to be talking about cancer specifically, and my guest today is going to be sharing his story and his navigation through the process. Is it really that we are going to say, oh, I have to just get out there and I'm going to slay that horse? Perhaps maybe we need to find out what our heart is about, what our life is about, what's true to us, and how can we find and gather our power to be able to have the time for our next breath, because it's so precious. Life is truly about one breath, and we know that it's so precious because everybody wants it. So enjoy it, be aware of it, honor it, and thank it for showing up. My guest today is Bill Potts. His book is Up for the Fight, How to Advocate for Yourself as You Battle Cancer from a 5-time Survivor. Bill, thank you so much for joining us today. It's a pleasure to have you with us.
Dr. Jeanette, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
So glad to have you, Bill, because I think right now in the year 2025, it seems as if cancer's really been on the loose, so to speak. It seems as if it's affecting all generations, and we're seeing its prevalence so much more in the world today. Don't you think?
That's true. The number of cases worldwide is going up, in particular in the U.S. It's gone up from 1.8 million cases per year in the last few years. 2025 will break 2 million. And you're right, it's starting to get younger and younger and younger, so that's really concerning.
You know, I live here in New Orleans, and I could tell you in the Southern Belt, it's very prevalent. You know, I live, quote, Cancer Alley. And we think about Texas also, you know, it's very high. And, you know, when you go through the airport, it says, we are the number one on liver transplants. I'm thinking, yeah, of course you are, because everybody here drinks. You know, you go to another airport and it says, we are number one on cancer therapies. Of course you are, because everybody has it. So, you know, you go to the place where everybody has it, and you learn how to develop your therapies and your treatments. Isn't that truly what you talk about in your book, Up for the Fight, is about how do you stand up for yourself and find out what you need and seek it out?
Yeah, that's true. 100% about owning the journey. It's your life. You have to own it. It works for any sort of health issue. It works for life in general. But advocating for yourself and taking charge of your journey, there are a lot of people that believe that your healthcare provider, that your medical care team is in charge of your journey, when in fact, you're in charge of your journey. They've got a lot of patients. You've only got one of you. So you have to treat it like your life depends on it, because it does.
Right.
And you have to treat it like you would any job that you have, and be disciplined and be focused, ask questions, take notes, be present, do research. All those things are going to be critical to the outcome of your journey.
But if you really look at it, Bill, we have to take a step back in history. Because if we look at it, I grew up in the 50s. You know, doctors, there were hardly any specialists, you know, and then eventually people started having more complex health conditions. So then they started divvying it up and having specialists in the 70s and 80s and 90s. If you had something go wrong, now you go from your primary care to someone else. And I can honestly say is that we have learned in the profession of medicine more and more on how to care for self. And really when we start divvying it up and have different doctors take care of different parts of us, it's really up to us to create the web or the mesh that brings them together, because I can honestly tell you from personal experience, from professional experience, that web is never created in a professional setting, period. You may believe it's true. It is not true. The doctor is not vested in finding out, oh, I remember she said she was having a blood test at the other doctor. I think I'm going to call him up and see how she's doing. No, not going to happen. It doesn't happen. It's truly up to you to be vested in what is the care of your own body and how you seek services to be able to navigate that path. Yes?
That is 100% accurate, and I've had 3 different types of cancers, currently have one in remission from the other and cured from the other. So I'm dealing with one major healthcare group that's managing my cancers. And even within that group, I have to be managing my journey amongst all those doctors. There is nobody overlooking Bill Potts's cancer journey other than me. And it ties into other specialists as well, because the chemotherapy impacts the skin. So I've got a dermatologist. Chemotherapy impacted my heart. So I've got a cardiologist, and the list goes on. And it's my job to communicate with them frequently about what's going on with my health, and to make sure that if I'm getting that blood test that you talked about, that those results get to them as well, which means in many cases it's the patient reaching out via the portal and saying, here's my results. And here's what I need. Here, can you look at them, please, and advise me on what they mean?
Right. Because it definitely is about being able to say, what is the world going around? You know, I can think back in the 50s and 60s, nobody ever asked for the lab results. It just wasn't. Because we believed that the doctor knew more. Hey, people didn't go to college in those decades. They just started going to college when I did. That was in the 70s. That's when people started going to college more frequently, en masse. So if we think about it, the doctor always knew what was right. We kind of walked in, threw our body on the table and said, hey, fix it. Tell me what to do. Now we look at the year 2025. No way, Jose, are we ever going to give the doctor all of that power. We are going to say, this is how I'm going to take my journey, and I'm going to pick and choose what I'm going to be able to do along that journey.
Yes, an example of that, 2008, I was diagnosed with stage 3 lymphoma. I'd had thyroid cancer in 2002. And in 2003, my thyroid cancer oncologist, a local for-profit place, told me that my thyroid cancer was back. And Dr. Jeanette, that didn't make sense because I didn't have a thyroid and I'd been through massive amounts of radiation treatment, the same stuff that comes out of Chernobyl, iodine-131, to get rid of any remnants of my thyroid. So I got a second opinion at MD Anderson in Houston, and they told me, not only is your thyroid back, but dude, you have been lit up with excessive amounts of radiation, and we'll never know for certain, but that lymphoma, could have been caused by that radiation that I received for the thyroid care. So I go through a week of tests at MD Anderson. I sit down with them on a Friday afternoon, and they're like, okay, here's your treatment protocol for this particular type of lymphoma. And I told them no.
Right.
And this is the number one place in the world. And they're like, no. And they didn't take offense to it. And they're like, well, why? I said, because with this treatment protocol, because I'm advocating for myself, I've done my homework. I said, I'm going to lose my hair. I make my living, customer-facing business. I'm in sales. I'm in marketing. I'm traveling. And I can't be that salesperson without my hair, with that gray look from chemo, because then the conversation is going to revolve around me, not you. And if you're going to be successful in sales, it needs to be about the customer, not about the salesperson. And they're like, okay. Just give us some time. So I almost missed my flight back to Tampa, and they came back 2.5 hours later after meeting as a team, and they're like, okay, Bill, we've got an idea for you. I'm like, what? Like, you've never heard of this before, but we're testing a way to beat your cancer called immunotherapy, which didn't even make it into the public lexicon until 2009. So you'll be patient 23 to try this. And I'm like, well, what if do I get to keep my hair? Yes. What if it doesn't work? They're like, well, then you lose your hair. So it's only costing you time. I'm like, let's do it. And so right off the bat, on cancer number 2, I was really owning that journey, and I was helping dictate, to them what my needs were. In this case, keep my hair and cure my cancer, or put it in remission, and that worked. And so by accident, I became an early benefactor of something that's super common now, which is immunotherapy, none of which would have happened if I hadn't advocated for myself.
It's totally important because so many times once people hear that diagnosis, they're pretty much flat out. I mean, you hear that, it's like a cement door just shuts. You can hear it go clap in your head, so to speak. Many people have reported it. You know, they said, all of a sudden, my heart stopped beating, or all of a sudden, you know, just something happened. And that's when your, what I call your life path, has been diverted. Have you ever noticed over the decades, you know, when you go to a train farm or a train, you know, where there's a lot of trains, you'll see all these tracks, but there's a big switch in the middle. And you'll see the guy go out and switch it, and the train will go a different way. That's exactly what people will report. They say, I heard that when that happened. I heard the clap when the guy put the lever down, and I heard it take a different path. Don't you think that's true?
It's very true. It's almost instantaneous, and the challenge for people is how quickly can they accept it and start focusing on my life's new direction, because it's not just new for now. If you're diagnosed with a major health issue, it's changed forever. And so I see patients that freeze and have a hard time processing that their old life is taking a new direction.
Right.
And that delays second opinions, it delays treatments, it delays movement. And that's pretty dangerous when you're talking about cancer. The first 30 days are pretty critical. And so you have to take a deep breath. You have to accept it, and you've got to start focusing on the job at hand, which is beating cancer.
But let's talk for 1 second what you just said, Bill. When you said about they're losing their life as they knew it, you have to then understand, and I speak about this for over 15 years now on the show, is that we are so much more than the body in which we are inhabiting, or the processes that's going on inside of it. We are so much more than our identity or a job or our relationships, whatever that might be, because we are really a soul and our spirit. And if we can keep very much focused on that, we say, what if I lose that? What if I lose a relationship that wasn't sturdy because they don't want to help walk me through this? What if I lose that job because they said they can't have someone look sickly? What if I lose my security of my house and I have to go find a downsized apartment or go ask for help? What if I lose my sense of knowing who I am and I'll no longer be on that path again? And then we say that's exactly the reason the cancer shows its face and it takes you on the journey. So maybe you can look at that and say, I am so much more. I am not that outside shell. Don't you think perhaps?
That's accurate too. And I think that in a diagnosis with cancer, you have to decide that cancer is not my identity. This cancer fight may be a part of who I am, but it's not all of who I am, because there's a lot of the rest of me. And I think about 10% of the people get caught up that cancer defines them. 80% are like me, that it's a part of me, but I got a lot of other parts of Bill Potts in my life, and I'll fit this in. And then there's another 10% that just kind of go into the denial mode and never get over that shift in the train tracks.
Yeah, they get stuck in the anger and the shame and the guilt. What did I do wrong? What happened? Why did this happen? And they're looking to blame someone, something, somewhere out in the universe, so to speak, you know, because if they believe that if they could find that one moment in time, that maybe they can be just as powerful as ever and change it, you know, and then everything will be okay. I think that struggle in the mental mind that is very real for many people once they have a diagnosis, don't you think?
It's true. I was lucky that endurance athletics was a part of my life and really helped teach me some of the principles that I needed to fight the cancer battle. And so I was used to having unexpected happen, tearing a ligament a few months before an Ironman race, and how am I going to run a marathon, and what am I going to do? And you adapt. Or tearing a ligament during a race, which happened to me. So how do I get to the finish line? And so not planning for the unexpected, but planning on how to deal with the unexpected. And that's helped me immensely in this journey. So even within the cancer journey, it's very fluid, day to day, emotionally, mentally, physically, things can change. And I think what has really helped me too is the experience of having gone through this journey a lot of times, and the experience of having almost died, and to reset my priorities about not only who I am, but why I'm fighting and why I need to continue to give it my best effort no matter how hard things become for me.
Over the decades, I've had so many experiences of people, they call it near death. I say, no, honey, I actually did die. I actually went over the other side and had a conversation and decided to come back. And I think that's very important for many people to be able to say, is there another option? And what I'm offering is that other option. Because once you realize that, you say, why did I come back? I came back because I wanted to. I came back because it's simply that. And to say, that's it. It isn't because I'm going to have a bucket list and I'm going to do all this other stuff and blah, 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 blah. That's all outside schmutz, so to speak. I came back because I wanted to. I wanted to see what would come up next. And I think if you can understand that, then you're able to say, am I operating from the scope of being powerless and this is happening to me, or am I operating from the scope of I am now empowered and I'm going to be able to see how this plays out, and I'm a participant in the process. Perhaps?
Well said. It took me, my aha moment was September 17th, 2020. I had woken up in the recovery room at Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville after having had a painful tumor removed from below my right hip. And I woke up from that surgery having an emotional breakdown. I'm not really talking about a few tears. I'm talking full-fledged emotional breakdown. And because it was during the pandemic time, nobody could be there with me except for the nurse. And she reaches and grabs my hand, says, what's wrong? And I said, Jen, I'm not up for the fight anymore. I've had a great career, great family, great life, and I know what's coming. And this is cancer treatment. It's going to be cancer treatment number 5, and I was just diagnosed with number 6 a couple months ago. So I think I'm throwing in the towel, and I'm done. And so she called in the pastor, Tanya, who sat with me for an hour and a half, and we reconnected with the reasons why I needed to fight this journey and really reset my soul to fight. And we determined that I needed to fight for my family, needed to fight for my friends. I needed to fight for my meaningful work. And she goes, you're missing one thing. And I'm like, what? She goes, you need to fight to make God proud, which is true. And so armed with my reasons why, I decided that I was up for the fight and I was going to give it everything I had to beat the cancer again.
Do you think perhaps, Bill, now in this recent diagnosis, the answer is you're just going to live for your own soul and your own spirit and maybe not for all that outside?
Yeah, it's true. It's you live in the present. I live like that colorblind person that gets those glasses that all of a sudden can see the colors. That's what shifted for me. Everything is interesting. I can go outside and I watch the butterflies. I see shapes in the clouds I never saw before. The sound of kids playing is beautiful to me. So I see life in that way. And I also take each day, I wake up each day and I have to take a pill for my missing thyroid, which is a good reminder. Before I get out of bed, I do some meditation and prayer, get out of bed, take my pill, and it reminds me that I'm on bonus time, that each day truly is a gift, and it's legitimately true for me. And it changes so much how I live my life, how I spend my time, what I do, what I say, how I think. And it's been one of the big blessings of going through this journey.
You know, I think people wait for a diagnosis until they be able to see that. I've lived that way my entire life. I'm almost 70. It's always been that way. I've been through, like, some hard knocks. I mean, let me tell you, they would make your toes curl, all of this stuff, the collection. I could go on forever. However, I never understood the word suffering. I never suffered. I just had experiences. They induced pain. They had change. They shifted. They moved on. And I just kept going because that was that's me. That's who I am. But I also think about it, and I also shared on this show many decades ago, and I said, life is breath. Everything else is line-up. And I know you understand that. And I said, everything else is a gift. And isn't that the perspective that we are truly looking to come to?
Yeah, that's beautiful.
You know, I think about it all the time when you share about your in your book. Again, the book is Up for the Fight. I think it's very important for many when they have a diagnosis to check out your book because it says how to pick your care team, how to know what's coming down, how to know what to do for your tests, how to know what you're going to be able to experience, how to know what to do next, what you might have, what you might lose, who do you need to stand by you. So it's very much a logistics and a guidebook of walking through the process because sometimes you have to step back and say, okay, I get all of this esoteric kind of philosophical way of being. I understand the doctor's going to take care of his stuff, but I need to know when I get up in the morning, what do I do next? And your book is truly that. It's a guidebook for what do you do next, right?
Yeah, and the beautiful part was it wasn't my idea. At the end of this emotional breakdown with Pastor Tanya, at the end of the conversation, once I'd reconnected with my whys and my reasons to fight, she leans in and goes nose to nose, literally nose to nose with me and says, Bill, I've got one more thing for you. I'm like, what? She says, I want you to turn your pain into purpose and write a book to help others. So I thought about it, and I told her I would, not really knowing what that meant, but I had a lot of reasons to forget it and not do it. I was coming off of some pretty powerful pain meds, but at the Pod's house, a deal's a deal, and so I reached out to one publisher, Dr. Jeanette, and the CEO calls me. She goes, we want to do this book with you. And I'm like, why? She goes, well, I lost one of my close friends to cancer recently, and there's not a book like What to Expect When You're Expecting for cancer patients. And I wish there had been a book written like that for her. I'm like, okay, we'll do it. But it wasn't just me. It was a whole team. The publisher team had to help me because I wrote it while I was going through chemotherapy, and I was running it on a little bit of an accelerated timetable because I wasn't sure I was going to survive. And so we got the book done well in advance of when it was published. So that comment from Pastor Tanya really changed. That's one of those train tracks that changed the direction of my life. I owned a marketing agency. I was busy with work, but all of a sudden I had a new purpose in life, which is to write this book while I was working. And then once the book came out, I got rid of the agency so I could focus on pushing the book, because the goal of the book is to change and save lives. I wanted to get one. We had one life get saved by getting a second opinion, another one by going up for the fight even before the book came out. And so it's a remarkable story of trying to be present in hard times and listening and accepting that change in direction on the train tracks and doing well in the direction that you're headed.
Also, too, Bill, your book truly is very concise. You get a lot of these books sometimes. I read probably 25 books a month, for the radio show. And it's going on and on and on and trying to validate it and the stories and everything else. What I like about your book is you can't put too much in the brain at this time. When you have a diagnosis, there's very little that you can keep stuffing in your brain where it's going to actually make sense. And each chapter in your book is just a few pages. It's sort of like, here's the information. Here's how to do it. Here's what I found, period, concise. And I think that's more valid of a process of a sharing and engaging with others than all of this other stuff out there. You don't need that at this time. Great. You want to know about your soul and spirit and all that other stuff? Yeah, great. We know that. Even when I talk to patients at end of life, they're like, yeah, I got it. But tell me, how am I going to do this? How am I going to die? How am I going to live? That's what I want to know. And that basic core information is truly what we're asking, don't you think?
Yeah, I'm lucky because that is correct. That's the way it's written. It's meant to be able to take with you into treatments. It's meant to have checklists to guide you through it, to give you reassurance that you're doing the right thing. And I'm fortunate that because of the book, I talk to cancer patients often. I'm easily accessible, so I'm happy to talk with patients going through their journey. I was doing a lot of that this morning. And so I'm being able to share what I know. And this book is not about me. It's about what I've learned and that can help other patients and their families and their friends. But now I'm getting it back. And so I'm learning from them and being inspired from their stories. In particular, there's a new treatment for a cancer that one of the folks that I'm talking with is about to go through. I'm like, hey, can you teach me about this as you go through it, because this is a potential treatment for me down the line. So I'm getting it back. And it's awesome to be learning more and to be inspired by others while you're also helping others. Now, I don't hear from most people that read the book, but the ones that I do, it means a lot.
Because I know people have a lot to say about the internet and social media. You know, we hear all kinds of conversations and whatever it is. At any rate, I look back, 70s and 80s when I went to medical school, it was all about the books in the library. Those books are antiquated now. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. And now medical students are truly, and doctors are learning what's coming out on the internet as fast as it comes out. So the idea is that if you find something that's new or exciting, or you read something or you saw something, speak up to your healthcare team. And if your healthcare team says, no, you need to stop Googling information, then you need a new healthcare team, perhaps?
That's true. Yeah, you do have to own your own journey, and the great doctors are happy to learn from their patients. Right. Particularly during the COVID pandemic, when my chance of surviving COVID was less than 50% if I caught a cold or the COVID or the flu, because my immune system was so beat up from the chemo. Yeah, I was doing a lot of research on the best ways to enhance my immune system, to protect me from viruses, and my doctor was open to learning from me, which was fantastic, because he had other patients going through the same thing. So he could take my experience and coach others.
Right, because we can't be everywhere every time. We can't be on the computer Googling stuff and knowing it all the time. It's just the world is expanding so fast and so quickly with new information, new cancers, new therapies, new treatments, and new places are opening up to be able to help support patients, don't you think?
It's true. I like AI because as AI continues to advance, it's going to make my job a lot easier in researching what's available. I do a lot of research with the pharmaceutical companies on what's happening. Leukemia Lymphoma Society is a great resource for me because of my having lymphoma, and they're always up to date on resources, so I lean into them a lot as well. But that research is getting easier to do, and because it's easier to do, hopefully more people will do it. Right.
Let's talk, Bill, about the idea of, you share in the book, the buddy system. I always liken it to the idea of a co-pilot. Who are you going to find to co-pilot you along the path? It doesn't always have to be the same person, doesn't always have to be your spouse, doesn't always have to be a family member, it could be anyone. You may have a co-pilot who will hand off to another co-pilot to be able to get you through your day. Who is the one standing next to you that can hear you, see you, and feel you? Isn't that what a co-pilot's all about?
I love the use of the word co-pilot. I call it the buddy system in the book, as you said, and it, particularly for a cancer patient, really any major health issue, having that buddy with you during appointments, during treatments, during phone calls with the medical care team becomes important, because as the patient, the stress of it all can make it kind of hard to think and be organized, let alone for cancer patients. The chemo brain is real, and it becomes cognitively challenging to really understand what's being said. So you do need to have that buddy or that co-pilot with you. And it doesn't have to be, and usually isn't always the same person, because life happens and people have to work and travel. But I talk about how important it is to have somebody with you, in particular during treatments, because how things can randomly go off the rails, to keep the train analogy going. And it's happened to me. And yes, when I'm going through infusions or chemotherapy, I'm alarmed up, and I'm always by a nurse's station so they can keep an eye on me. But things can happen so fast that it's good to have that buddy with you, not only to get you something to eat, get you something to drink, get you to the bathroom, but just to be looking at you, just to make sure that if something happens, they can stand up and holler for help. And that's happened to me. So it's come in handy that I had a buddy with me.
I always call it the co-pilot, because I find it a reflection of you that needs the support. You know what I mean? In other words, you're projecting out to someone else to show up in form of what you need. You know, I kind of liken it as, you think if there's two of you, so to speak, because sometimes I think when you have someone with you and they really, I even think of the time and I'll say, do you just not know how to help? I'm sure you've probably seen that. You'll see someone that might be going along with another person to a visit or whatever, to cancer therapy or treatments or whatever it might be, and they're just kind of standing there and they're not engaged in supporting the person. I think, oh gosh, I wish I could just step in and be that other person's shadow to be able to support them. Isn't that good when you can really find someone like that?
It is. And by the way, I want to go back to your use of the co-pilot. If I could write the book again, that's what I would call it, because it sends such a good signal that it's not a me, it's a we.
Right.
And I love that. Yes, there is a pilot, which is the patient, but the co-pilot's also flying the plane. And so it shifts the mindset that it's a team effort. Love that. And
it's like a shadow self. Yeah. It
is. It's really well said. And I was lucky enough, not always, my wife couldn't always be there. We had 3 young kids when I started this journey, and she had to work, but I always had somebody sitting with me that knew me, that knew my story. I keep a couple page summary of my health issues, so that I can take that into new doctors or provide that to the co-pilot when needed. So if they forget, they can literally look at it and go, oh yeah, this is what happened when, and they can share that with a doctor. Oh, he's allergic to this, just in case. And you shifted my thinking, Dr. Jeanette, and I love it. Co-pilot is a great way to describe it.
Let's talk for a second, Bill, about the idea of when you have treatments and testing going on. So many times people will, oh yeah, I got that stuff. They told me to do it, but I didn't feel like it. Or, oh, it didn't make me feel good, so I kind of just do it halfway, but I'm going to show up for the test anyway. We really need to be able to be participants in the process, be responsible for what they're asking us to do to have the best of outcomes. Because if you go in and you do it halfway, you're going to get a halfway of a result. You might have to do it again, or you might not get the results in the care or the treatment that's specifically designed for you. So really it is about being able to say, if I'm jumping into this path of being able to support my own health, I need a full-fledged, be on all cylinders and doing what's being asked of me, right?
There's a couple of areas to talk about related to that. It's the testing. They give you testing protocol that you have to go through before you take the test, and you're right. You have to follow that exactly, particularly for scans like the PET scans, the PET scans, that the preparation can be a little bit rigid, but you have to follow it to make sure you get the best result. And the other is on the treatment side. At MD Anderson, they taught me visualization techniques to help me beat the cancer by visualizing, what it was doing in my body, on the immunotherapy in particular, where it's the body, killing the cancer cells in the body. That's next level thinking in my mind, to give me that tool to help me fight. So there's the treatment side and there's the testing side, both where you really have to do your homework and prep.
Let's talk about when treatments and therapies fail. What do you do then? I always liken it to, we're not, when I had gone to the doctor and I was having terrible trouble with my head for decades, and I reported something to the neurologist, and he says, well, I've never heard of that before. And I said, well, that's perhaps because I'm a zebra and not a horse. And he says, no, you're a horse. And I really froze in my tracks at that moment. There is this saying in the medical community, when your patients come in, that you treat them as a horse. You treat them as something common. You sniffly nose, you got a cold. Your throat hurts, you got a sore throat. You feel like your heart's racing, well, let's check for a heart attack. In other words, these are common things that you check off your list first before going to the zebra, which could be, I might be I might be dying, I might have cancer, I might be whatever, on that extreme. So the idea is that you have to be very aware of what's going on with your signs and your symptoms and your tests and your team to say, I want you to look at me as a zebra every day I come in because I'm very unique and it's my life and this is how I want to be able to navigate it. Isn't that really what we're saying?
Yeah, it'd be nice if they looked at you as a zebra from the get-go, and some of the great doctors do. I've had that luck at MD Anderson in particular, where they looked at me really as the whole. And I was young, I was athletic, I was fit, I was positive, I was happy, which is different in my ability to handle some of the stuff that was thrown at me for treatment. So they saw me as a zebra, so it was pretty easy. And we set a goal at MD Anderson right up front. This is 2008. I'm like, can you get me to age 93? And they're like, we will. And I'm like, good, because that would be great. It's a team effort. But if you don't get that luck and you don't have the great doctor that looks at you as a zebra to begin with, you got to work hard to make sure they see you for who you are. And an example of that is one of these folks that I talked to that has cancer. Her heart was damaged by the chemotherapy, and she's a zebra. She's one of these people that her heart rate goes up when she's not busy because she's wired to always be doing something. So when she goes to bed, her heart rate gets elevated. And they're like, well, no, it can't be doing that. She goes, well, I have the data. I have a watch on that's telling me what's happening to my heart rate when I let it. It can't be right. It's because they didn't know she was a zebra, that she's just one of those people that can't rest. She's stressed when she's rest. And so it's a constant battle for her to convince those doctors to treat her for who she is, not like everybody else.
Yeah, that's definitely a big red flag for many patients. They will say, but they aren't listening. This whole idea of listening and the whole idea of understanding. Many times the patients get a diagnosis right then and there. It's sort of like, here's the protocol. They've got it all printed out in their desk drawer. They hand it to you. You get the standard one. And let's talk about it for a minute, because with insurance, you have to go through the standards first. You have to go through the standards to see them fail. I know with my head, they said, well, this is the medication. We have to exhaust all of this tier before we can go to the next tier. You have to have failed this level to be able to get graduated to the next one for an option. And definitely that is very important in cancer treatments, because they will say we have to give these drugs first before. We can't jump to that new experimental one. Haven't you found that?
Yeah, it's true. It's super frustrating. It's one of the flaws in the system. I get it. I don't like it. That's why the big National Cancer Institute accredited cancer centers can help alleviate some of those issues through the clinical trials. And, as the benefactor of that in 2008 and again in 2014 and again in 2019, when the clinical trials drugs were the ones that I was able to get and really help me. So there are options to go outside of the standard of care, but you got to have to find the right place to do them, and you got to find the right place that has them, and you got to find the right doctor who will prescribe them.
Right. And you have to understand, too, is that this is a very difficult topic at this moment. So what I would say is everybody going to be saved? Can you face the reality that we all die? Can you understand that it may be this progression of these experiences that may be your exit door?
Yeah, getting your hands around the dying piece is something that took me a little while to do. It's pretty important in the cancer journey that you think about it, that you talk about it. In life, it's probably also helpful, but in particular with cancer, when my last round of chemotherapy, I had a 3% chance of dying every time I went in to go do it. So I didn't really have a choice but to think about it, to talk about it, to deal with it, to accept it. My faith is really strong, so that helped me deal with it because I know the math, and the math doesn't apply to any particular person, but in the general sense of the 2 million people that are diagnosed a year with cancer, not everybody is going to live. So I worked hard, not only with the attorney to make sure all the legal stuff was taken care of, and with the financial advisor to make sure that was taken care of, but also talking about it with my wife, talking about it with my kids, getting them outside support to deal with the possibility of their dad or husband dying. And that's all been super helpful for them. A lot of people do. They just don't talk about it or hide it under the covers. But for us, the healthier way was to address it. Maybe it took me a little longer than I should have to get that handled. But in 2008, when I almost died, it kind of woke me up to the fact that I better think about it.
Yeah. That's pretty much most of my work. I work with patients at end of life or the time that, just around that. And when we really look at it, it takes us right back to the comment that I made before, and I said that life is breath. You have one breath when you come in and one breath when you go out. Everything else in the middle is a gift. And if we think about that, then we're not so hung up on how can I collect my plate because I have to do this, that, or the other. I mean, bucket lists, I'm like, just let them go. If you have breath today to just love the person next to you, that was a gift, period. And how simple that can be. I think it's the human story over decades that we've really gotten hung up on. I have to do this, and you have all these checklists, and everything has to be in place because, and all those checklists. And it really comes down to shame, guilt, anger, fear, insecurity, perhaps.
All well said. And one thing I've learned in my journey that's really helped me is to make sure that for those folks that I love, I tell them.
Right.
This can be challenging for some people, but if I love somebody, I tell them, and then they tell me they love me back. That's been magical. I don't know that doesn't happen without my cancer journey, but I appreciate them and life so much. I didn't want to be that person that didn't have a chance to do that. I also make sure that if I've got issues with people, I work them out. I make sure that I spend my time doing what I want to be doing or need to be doing versus things I think I should be doing.
Right.
I try to be much more present in the moment when I'm with people, off the phone, looking them in the eye, listening. I prefer smaller groups versus bigger groups because I can go more on one-on-one. Dr. Jeanette, I'm much more flexible about, okay, freestyling what we're going to do today, just roll with it and see what happens. It's a change in my life that has been so powerful that I just hope others can look and listen to what you say and live in the present.
Right. Yeah, it truly is. I call it, you really have no other choice. You know, so many people are looking back, you know, and they're trying to reconstruct the future because they want part of the past back, so to speak. And I'll say, but you really have no choice other than just to breathe in the moment. And when you breathe in the moment, that will unfold the future. It's very difficult, I think, when we've had a way of life in which we commanded that we would do A plus B and we would always get C because that was the outcome. And we live in an outcome-based existence. When we live in a creation-based existence, then we're saying, I'm going to live for today, and how will the world present it, and how will I navigate through it? That's totally different. And sometimes it's a little bit easier when you can just say, I'm just going to breathe for today and see what unfolds, versus I have to do all this checklist, don't you think?
That's a super healthy way to live. And, I mean, my journey's changed the way I deal with money and my priority with money. It's changed it completely. It has given me the ability to handle hard situations so much better. People crack up that it's hard to get me angry. Because most of the stuff is small stuff. And I'm just grateful that the cancer journey has made such a positive impact in my life. If somebody asked me, you know, was it worth it? I'm like, was what worth what? Was it worth having cancer all these times? That's a profound question. So I thought about it. I'm like, yes. You know, I've gone through more than my fair share for sure, but it's changed my perspective on life in such a positive way. And now with the book, able to change and save lives through the book, it's worth it. And Dr. Jeanette, we all should respond that way to challenges in our life, that, it wasn't, like you said, it wasn't against me, it was for me, and find the good from the challenges.
You know, when I look at it, Bill, I always say that for you, going through that so many times, cancer was, again, your co-pilot that took you along this journey to find out more of who you are or what you're really about and what your real core essence is. And that's what you learned. And I think sometimes if a disease takes us there, I live in New Orleans, a hurricane can take us there, loss can take us there, fires can take us there. Doesn't matter what it is. Something will be the purpose that will just like kick your butt out the door and say, go, you're on another pathway now. And if you can go through that and say, this is an experience in the moment, but I can still love and I could still have joy and I could still smile for today, even if you're going through the worst treatments, even if tomorrow's your last day to breathe. You know, I had this one patient, we'll close with this. I had gone to her house and I said, what did you want? You know, how could I help you? And finally on the third day, I walked in and I said, you know, we're really getting nowhere. What do you really want? She says, I want a heart transplant. She knew what she wanted all along. I said, well, how do you exactly see that unfolding? She said, well, I found this doctor downtown, and he's in town this week from Paris, and he does heart transplants. I want to go see him. So I took the phone number, and I called him up, and I said, hey, this is so-and-so. Can I bring a patient down? He says, yes. Within an hour, we were in his office. He was looking at her records. He turned around and says to me, I hope that you enjoy today. He looked at her and says, please enjoy today. And it was as simple as that. And she turned to him and said, am I going to die today? He says, I don't think so. He says, but enjoy your day. And that's the vital message that we hope to get through. Irregardless of where you are in the path, from new diagnosis, pre-diagnosis, last breath, whatever it is going through it, enjoy it for today. Isn't that what we're trying to drive home?
That's beautifully said. So true.
No other choice, right? I think, Bill,
For
when
sure.
I think about it is that if all we have today, you had shared in the back of your book about laying nap also. I think it truly comes out of you in New Orleans is about what can you breathe in the moment. Breathe in the sun, breathe in the lights or wherever you are, and just say thank you. Because our life is only for a moment in time. So thank you so much for engaging with us today in this conversation, because I think what we've done for many is we've opened up the door, and maybe they now have some questions to ask. Maybe?
Yeah, thank you so much. Agree with you.
Bill, can you share with the listeners how to find out more information about your work?
Sure. I've got a great website, billcpotts.com. You can buy the book anywhere books are sold. Amazon seems to be the most popular place. So if you need it or you have a friend or family going through the journey with cancer, this is a great book to give them. I hope the listeners don't need it, but likely they're going to know somebody that does. So please gift it to them.
Absolutely. Well, Bill, it was such a pleasure to have you with us. We thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jeanette. It's my pleasure.
If you'd like to find out more information about Bill Potts, again, the book is up for the fight. Please do click down the link on the bottom of today's show page to go directly to his website for more information. And it is about saying, I have questions. I don't know. I feel like I'm hit in the face. I'm frozen in time. What do I do? This book is an absolute guidepost to be able to co-pilot your process. And just as Bill shared, it can be for you or for someone else and say, I know someone's going along with this. I'm going to go to their visit and I'm going to take this book with me. I'm going to write things in the pages. I'm going to turn around and give it back to them and say, use this as your little diary. Use this as your little, kind of your, as we would say, your experience moment. And document it in here. And so we'll have something to be able to say, tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another breath, and that's the gift that we'll be having. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Dr. Jeanette Gallagher. Until tomorrow, have a great day.
Today we discussed many life-changing concepts. Who do you turn to, and how do you know what is best when faced with a health crisis? Dr. Jeanette is a patient advocate. She listens to the patient, the doctors, and the family, clarifies the health issues and concerns, then helps the patient make the best choices going forward. If you would like help implementing change into your life and health, we can talk and see where you are stuck and how to improve the quality of your life. Check the link on the bottom of today's show page or visit drjeanettegallagher.com to schedule a phone appointment today.